Imagine it's 6 a.m. The sun hasn't even crested the horizon in Pinecrest, Florida. You are 15 years old. You are asleep in your childhood bed, dreaming about code, about girls, about algebra, normal teenage things. Suddenly, your world explodes. The front door of your house is smashed off its hinges. The hallway fills with men in body armor, screaming conflicting orders. Federal agents, hands where I can see them, get on the ground. You stumble out of your room, rubbing sleep from your eyes, wearing nothing but your boxers and a t-shirt. You look down the barrel of an MP5 submachine gun held by a man from the Department of Defense. Behind him, agents from NASA and the FBI are tearing your house apart. They are bagging your computer tower like it's a kilo of heroin. They are seizing your floppy disks like they are nuclear launch codes. You are terrified. You're shaking. Your first thought is that there has been a mistake. You aren't a terrorist. You aren't a drug lord. You aren't a spy selling secrets to the Russians. You are just a kid who likes puzzles. This was the terrifying reality for Jonathan James on a humid morning in early 2000. He became the first juvenile in the history of the United States to be incarcerated for cybercrime. But why? What could a 15-year-old possibly do to make the most powerful military on Earth tremble? He didn't steal money from a bank. He didn't crash the stock market. He did something much more dangerous and much more embarrassing for the powers that be. He proved that the impenetrable fortress of the United States government was actually a house of cards. And he did it all from a computer that wasn't even powerful enough to run modern video games. This is the story of C. Comrade, the boy who conquered NASA, humiliated the Pentagon, and paid for it with his life. The Prodigy. To understand the tragedy, we have to understand the time, the late 1990s. The internet was the Wild West. There was no two-factor authentication, no biometric scanners. Security was an afterthought. It was a world built for people who knew how to read the green text scrolling down a black screen. Jonathan James was born into this world. He wasn't a criminal mastermind in a dark trench coat. He was a bored, brilliant kid from South Florida. His father was a programmer, which meant Jonathan didn't learn English as his first language. He learned C. He learned Unix. While other kids were outside playing baseball or trading Pokemon cards, Jonathan was inside, teaching himself the architecture of the internet. He adopted the handle C. Comrade, a nod to the rebellious underground nature of the hacker scene. Jonathan was obsessive. When he found a puzzle, he couldn't sleep until he solved it. At first, it was harmless. He hacked into the Miami-Dade school system because he didn't like his grades. It was the digital equivalent of sneaking into the teacher's lounge. But for a mind like Jonathan's, the school system was too easy. It was boring. He wanted to see how the world really worked. He wanted to look behind the curtain of the adult world. He realized that the computer screen was a window, and if you knew the right commands, you could open that window and climb into any room in the world. He started scanning, pinging IP addresses, looking for open doors. He found one. In the summer of 1999, at just 15 years old, Jonathan set his sights on the biggest target imaginable. He wasn't interested in credit cards. He wasn't interested in corporate secrets. He wanted the crown jewels. He looked at the United States Department of Defense. The hack. Most people think hacking the Pentagon requires a supercomputer and a team of operatives like in Mission Impossible. Jonathan did it with a Pentium PC that had less processing power than the smartphone currently in your pocket. He didn't use brute force. He used finesse. He discovered a server located in Virginia, belonging to the DTRA. These are the guys responsible for analyzing threats to the United States, including nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. This was a server that held the secrets of World War III. But the server had a flaw. It was running a standard version of Windows NT, and it had a backdoor, a vulnerability in the code that the administrators hadn't patched. Jonathan slid through that back door like a ghost. But he didn't just look around and leave. he did something brilliant and illegal. He installed a sniffer. Imagine you're standing on the side of a highway. You watch the cars go by. You can see the cars, but you can't see who is inside or what they are carrying. A sniffer is like a magical X-ray machine. It allowed Jonathan to read the digital traffic passing through that server. He captured thousands of emails. He captured sensitive data. But most importantly, he captured usernames and passwords. Government employees feeling safe on their secure network were typing their credentials, unaware that a 15-year-old in Miami was writing them down. And then they struck gold. One of the passwords didn't belong to the DoD, it belonged to NASA, specifically the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama, US. He logged in. He now had root access, God mode, on NASA's computers. He began to download source code. He pulled down $1.7 million worth of proprietary software. This wasn't just a flight simulator. This was the code that controlled the International Space Station. He was looking at the source code for the Environment Control System. This is the software that controls the temperature and humidity in the living quarters of the ISS. It controls the carbon dioxide scrubbers. It controls the oxygen. Let that sink in. A 15-year-old sitting in his pajamas in Florida held the code that kept astronauts alive in the vacuum of space. If he had wanted to, if he had been malicious, he could have theoretically altered that code. He could have turned off the air. He could have frozen them or boiled them. He held the lives of American heroes in his hands. But he didn't hurt anyone. He just wanted to learn. He wanted to see how the world really worked.
He later said, "The code was crappy, certainly not worth $1.7 million. He was critiquing NASA's homework, but NASA wasn't looking for a critique. They were looking for a culprit. The panic and the fall. When NASA administrators realized someone was in their system, they went into full-blown panic mode. They didn't know Comrade was a kid. For all they knew, this was a KGB operation. This was cyber warfare. They took the nuclear option. NASA shut down their entire computer network. They went dark. For 21 days, the agency that put a man on the moon was offline, scrubbing every hard drive, patching every hole, trying to ensure that no logic bombs had been left behind. That shutdown cost the American taxpayers $41,000, a number that seems small now, but in 1999, it was a headline-grabbing scandal. Jonathan was smart, but he got cocky. He made a classic mistake. He used the stolen access at the DTRA to route his own personal internet traffic, trying to hide his location. But the sheer volume of data he was moving created a trail. The Department of Defense tracked the anomaly. They traced the digital footprints from Virginia to Alabama and finally to a Bell South IP address in Miami, Florida. The FBI watched him for weeks. They tapped his phone line. They sat in unmarked cars down the street, drinking coffee, waiting for him to make a move. They built their case. They wanted to make sure they had him dead to rights. And then came the raid, January 26th, 2000. The media went into a frenzy. Teen hacker cracks NASA. Jonathan became an instant folk hero in the underground. He was the David to the government's Goliath, but to the Department of Justice, he was a menace. They wanted to try him as an adult. They threatened him with decades in federal prison, but he was only 16 by the time of the trial. In the end, a deal was struck. Jonathan was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest and harsh probation until he turned 18. He was forced to write letters of apology to NASA and the DoD, but the worst part of the sentence wasn't the confinement, it was the ban. The judge ordered that Jonathan was not allowed to touch a computer. He wasn't allowed to use the internet. For a boy whose entire identity, whose entire social life and intellectual outlet was the digital world, this was a lobotomy. He compared it to cutting off a pianist's hands. The second act. Jonathan served his time. He stayed clean. He turned 18 and tried to rebuild his life. But the label hacker is like a tattoo. You can't scrub it off. He struggled to find normal work. Who hires the guy who hacked the Pentagon to fix their printer? He lived in fear that the government was always watching, waiting for him to slip up. And then, in 2007, the other shoe dropped. A massive cyber attack hit TJX Companies, the parent company of TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Hackers stole credit card information from 45 million customers. It was, at the time, the largest data breach in history. The Secret Service was under immense pressure to solve the case. They looked at their list of known genius hackers. They saw the name Jonathan James. The Secret Service raided Jonathan's house again. They raided his brother's house. They raided his girlfriend's house. They found nothing. Jonathan denied any involvement. He told them, "I didn't do it. I'm done with that life." But the feds didn't believe him. It turned out that Jonathan had been friends online with some of the actual perpetrators, including a hacker named Christopher Scott. May 18th, 2008. Jonathan James, 24 years old, sat alone in his shower. He had a gun. He believed there was no way out. He believed that no matter what he said, the government was going to lock him in a cage for the rest of his youth for a crime he didn't commit. He wrote a 5-page suicide note. It is one of the most heartbreaking documents in the history of the internet. He pulled the trigger. The tragedy is, he was right. Months after his death, the real ringleader of the TJX hack was caught, Albert Gonzalez. The investigation revealed that Jonathan James had nothing to do with the credit card theft. He was innocent. He showed us that the digital world we rely on is fragile. He showed us that security is often just an illusion. In the end, the system proved it always wins. But we have to ask ourselves, at what cost? Rest in peace,